When you need something hearty to fuel you up fast, grab a can of Campbell's Chunky Soup. Packed with big chunks of meat and vegetables, and now in 50 flavors. Campbell's Chunky Soup, the hearty way to fuel your game. Find your flavor at Chunky.com. The North Carolina Tar Heels head to Durham to face their fiercest rivals, the Duke Blue Devils. Touchdown! Coverage begins Thursday at 6:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio. Presented by Dr. Pepper. This is Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio and ESPN2.
Welcome back to the fold. Jimmy Graham, who had 2 touchdowns, both one-handed catches because his other hand was being held.
Obviously, Richard Sherman's offsides. He just plows into Carpenter.
He either did something wrong or he didn't do something wrong. If it's not a dirty play, then how is it unnecessary roughness?
I went to block the kick. I'm not going to let him make a kick. So when it called offsides, I'm not going to let him have a free play.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous play. And then he's over on the sideline basically taunting us.
Now, here's Mike and Mike.
Here we are. We're back and better than ever. Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and the winning word of the morning is 20 minutes away. In 20 minutes, we'll give you the word, we'll give you the ways to enter, and you could win a fabulous trip with us to the College Football National Championship game. Speaking of college football, Trevor Manich will be here shortly. We'll talk about that and more with him. Ryan Clark is in his regular Tuesday visit, having some fun with 2 different things on this election day, because you have to. Taking first off your favorite presidential sports names. So right now we have 3 that I think we have to choose between as our favorites. One is Quincy Carter.
Yep.
Because that's not your favorite.
Nope.
All right.
But I mean,
the
that's
next
one to
is
pick from. Right.
Lincoln Kennedy.
Yeah.
Nope.
And the
Give it
third
to me, Greeny. Give it to me.
is Ha Ha Clinton Dick.
Yes!
Ryan loves
Ha Clinton Dix for the win.
If you don't laugh, you're going to cry.
Oh, yeah.
With what's going on.
It's quite funny.
And I hate Alabama today, and I still like that.
I'm with you. That's kind of funny. Yeah, Alabama. Last week, Ryan said he thought LSU was going to beat Alabama. They almost
And
did.
I
We'll
was
talk
there.
about that. You were at the game.
I was there.
Okay, we'll talk about that when Trevor gets up here in just a second. I did want to, because I've been holding on this all morning long. Did you guys see what Theo Epstein and his staff did?
Yes, I did.
As part of their World Series celebration?
The GOAT.
There is a 6-letter word that I'm not allowed to use on the air. The first 3 letters are BAD. This was a bad blank move, and it's about as good as it gets. So we all know that the Cubs had the long-standing curse of the Billy Goat. There are pictures, I saw in the Chicago Sun-Times, of Theo Epstein, his right-hand man, Jed Hoyer, and 2 other senior Cubs executives sitting in the bleachers at Wrigley Field eating goat.
Yeah.
They ordered goat from a restaurant, and they're sitting out there, and they are eating the Billy Goat in the stands at Wrigley Field.
That is such a G move.
It's a great move. As long as you're
goodness.
washing it down with a beer as well, there can be nothing finer, right?
That's a
why.
G move.
That's why, to tie it into the election, my write-in vote is Theo Epstein.
Golick is voting Theo for
He fixed the
president.
Red Sox. He fixed the Cubs. He can fix the country.
He's the curse breaker for sure.
It's again, when I saw that, I was like,
That's good stuff.
He ate the goat.
Yeah, he did.
That is really something else. All right, Trevor Manich is here with the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, half the cost. Good morning, Trevor.
Good morning, and that's why Alabama, you know what they had for breakfast, Ryan? Tiger. Just
Now,
saying.
you know what?
Wow.
You know what? That's how insensitive people
Right out
behave.
of the gate.
After we just lose Mike, and you're going to say
It didn't
things
eat
like
Mike.
that.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we just lost Mike, and we're
Yeah.
not over it yet.
That was sad.
And for you
Your
to
mascot,
come on
yeah.
here
How sensitive must
And-
you be?
Yeah,
And
he is, Trevor.
to-
pretty
That's
sensitive.
really sensitive.
and to jump on us that way,
Boy, he really spun that.
That's
didn't he?
so
this down.
sensitive. Does anybody have a tissue?
Mike the Tiger, the LSU Tiger, unfortunately passed. Trevor, I understand what you were saying. This is
I
for
know,
someone
but-
who's a little sensitive for their
Listen,
team getting shut out.
hey, if we were used to losing the way Notre Dame is by now, maybe I would have accepted that a little bit better, Trevor.
Nicely done. You came all the way back.
My therapist would describe that as deflecting. But so, Trevor, let's let you weigh in, and then I want to hear Ryan's take on it. Just all other things aside, and your rooting interest aside, I believe we could describe that game. I have seen that game described in two different ways. One, thrilling, magnificent defensive football. Two lousy offenses going at it at the same time. Now, we all know which side Danny Kanell is going to take when he shows up in here in an hour. Trevor, what did you think it was?
I thought it was fantastic defensive football on both sides. And as a matter of fact, the guy on LSU, Dwight Thomas, who claimed that their defense would dominate the game, he had the defensive performance of the game on either team. He was fantastic. People that think that no-hitters in baseball are fantastic will turn around and say a game like this in football is boring. To me, it's the exact same thing. And you've got an Alabama defense that if you took all 11 of those starters, kept them together for 8 years up into the NFL, let them grow up, let them get NFL coaching, that 11 in the NFL would be a solid NFL defense. Not today.
Right.
But 8 years from now. And so at the college level, it's just incredible. And to watch them play, to me, is every bit as thrilling as watching offenses that are great play.
And the point, as Danny came in and said, well, how can you say it's horrible in the Big 12 when it's a 55-50 game, but then you call a 10-0 game, a defensive game, a great game? And my point is the offenses in the SEC aren't as bad as the defenses are in the Big 12. And I loved that game. I mean, I know it was tougher for you because you went to LSU, but just from an analytical point, as I tweeted out before that game, this is about to be a man's man game right here. This is about to be buckle up and get ready to go in this one.
Well, what's happened is the Big 12 and these other conferences and some of these football games that we watch has desensitized the world to think that scoring 50 points is fun to watch. But we go back to the grudge match of Alabama. I think it was 2011 when we were undefeated. It's 9-6.
Yep.
That game was fun to watch.
Yes, it was.
You look at this game, there were NFL players all around the field, both offensively and defensively, but these defenses stepped up and they made this game exciting. And if Danny Kanell wants to tell me that Alabama and LSU can't play offense, stroll Florida State out here. Stroll his school out here and watch how Leonard Fournette runs up and down the field. Watch how Jalen Hurts and that offense is able to score points against them. These are just two teams, and this game is played differently.
Yeah.
It means something else. These are two physical football teams, and like Trevor says, these are defenses that have a ton of NFL players.
And I think it was interesting to watch how both offenses tried to respond to those defenses. Alabama played like it was 2010. On offense, they just kept it close to the vest.
Right.
There was the Anaconda Alabama, where they just slowly squeezed you, and by the end of the game, they suffocated you and didn't make the big mistake. It was a throwback for Alabama's offense. LSU did what I hoped they would do, and that's get creative with Leonard Fournette. They actually put him out at wide receiver a few times, but see, Alabama expected that. And they came up and hammered him no matter where he was lined up. They figured, we will take him out of the game. And Danny Etling at quarterback, bless his heart, elevated quarterback play at LSU from heinous to average.
Yeah.
That's good enough to win against Missouri and Southern Miss.
But not Bama.
No, Alabama's going to shut you out at average as long as they can stop Fournette.
So that brings up a question that we asked a little bit earlier, and I'll ask it to you, Trevor Matich. If Alabama is going to lose again between now and the start of next season, be it during the regular year or during the playoff, which is the team that's going to beat them?
Auburn in the regular season, because Auburn's defense is playing lights out. LSU actually showed us how to beat Alabama this year. It's with strong defense that'll keep the score down. Then on offense, you need to get a couple of breaks. Maybe special teams have the ball bounce a little bit funny. But if it's not a low scoring game, you don't have a chance. Auburn has that kind of defense. Michigan has that kind of defense. Washington has that kind of defense. So these are teams that match up well on that side of the ball. Now, on the other side, the interesting thing is the plan in the past to beat Alabama's defense was a mobile quarterback. Right? Well, now a mobile quarterback isn't going to help you, because they've gotten so much smaller and more mobile on defense. Now you need an incredible pocket passer with a deep, intimate knowledge of where to go with that football from the pocket, right? Auburn doesn't have that. But you know who does? Washington. That's right.
I still think a mobile quarterback can do some damage to an Alabama defense. Not, what we saw from Deshaun Watson last year. I agree with you that their defense is better and it would be better at that. I still think it can. But I said earlier, I think people are sleeping on Washington. I love Browning. Browning is basically has the build of basically Drew Brees. And his incredible arm. He's got big-time receivers. And as I said before, they just rush with the front four. They don't have to blitz to get their sacks. I really like them, and I think people are sleeping on them. And I think, because we keep talking about this mobile quarterback and not a pro-type style of offense can beat him, Washington, I think, is a really, really good all-around team.
Well, I think Washington has the pro-style quarterback, but the offense still spreads it out. The offense is still innovative, and I do believe they have a chance. I just have to see them do it against somebody else. It's tough when you watch Pac-12 games, and even when it was against Stanford, and Stanford was ranked. Obviously, they play California this week. I just don't believe in them from a physicality standpoint going against a Washington. Golick mentioned Clemson earlier, and I think that people are sleeping on them. I don't think they're as good as last year. I would like, and maybe it's just because for the fun of it, I'd like to see them play Louisville. I don't think it's something that happens, but obviously during the regular season, the Auburn game is interesting to me. It's the Iron Bowl. Auburn's been able to score some point. They play great up front defensively, and I think that's the one game that people have to pay attention to that we know is coming on the schedule.
Let's get into a little Straight Talk here. It's brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, half the cost. I am nothing if not an unpaid lobbyist for my favorite conference, the Big Ten, which is where I went to school, and as we sit and we talk about all the different teams that we could see getting into a playoff circumstance, it was the team that opened in the playoff rankings last week at number 8 that I think is getting left out of the conversation, and that's Wisconsin. Let's look at a Wisconsin team in the Big Ten, Trevor, that has lost 2 one-possession games, one of them to Michigan, who is a top 5 team in the country, the other in overtime to Ohio State, which is a top 5 team in the country. If, and obviously this is presuming that Wisconsin wins out the rest of its schedule and avenges one of those losses in a Big Ten championship game, I grant that's the only way, obviously, this conversation becomes relevant. They become a 2-loss team, a Big Ten champ, with only one loss that was not avenged on its schedule, and either way it would be by 1 score to a top-level team. I think that Wisconsin would be a tough team to leave out in that scenario. I cannot read the look on your face right now as you're staring at me. What do you think?
I think that's fair, but it depends on whether the committee worships at the altar of the holy spreadsheet to the degree that they keep a team with 2 losses out because they have 2 losses. I would hate that. I would also hate it. See, the more I think about the way the playoff has worked the last 2 years, the more I think that this idea that they'll put the 4 best teams in, regardless of where they come from, could be incredibly damaging to college football. Because on years when they would leave out a conference champion for a team that did not win their conference but that the committee thought was better, what they've done is they've made conference championship races irrelevant at the national level. That takes entire fan bases in regions of the country out of being interested. It takes teams like Wisconsin, who could be playing better at the end of the season. Right. It takes them out. And remember this, Ryan, I know you've been on teams where, and you too, Mike, that sometimes the more talented team, the better team doesn't win.
Yes.
And in college football, one of the things that makes it special is that there are monumental, epic games in the regular season that shift the balance of power. And if those games don't shift the balance of power for the playoff the way they do in their own conference race, then what you've done is turn those games into exhibitions, and by the way, they don't really matter, and it's just a do-over. And so I think the committee must respect the Wisconsin, even with 2 losses, because that conference championship must trump almost everything else.
Do you think that eventually when we get to like an 8-team playoff, which I think we will, that it will become automatic if we're still in the Power 5 conferences, right, conference champ and then 3 more teams?
Yeah. And really that solves all these problems.
Yep.
And the committee will still be necessary for a variety of reasons, but you've got right now 5 Power 5 conference champions. And if one of those champs, let's say USC wins the Pac-12, 3 losses, right?
Right.
They're in. Because those 3 losses came early in the season when they were in a hangover.
They're playing well now.
Bama.
New quarterback, 5 wins in a row, playing Washington this week. Good test.
Right. And NFL teams, you've seen a bunch of them that sneak into the playoffs at 9-7 and go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Happens.
Wild card teams win the Super Bowl.
Happens all the time.
It's happened.
And so what you'd have 5 Power 5 conference champions, 1 group of 5 team, and then 2 at-larges, and then nobody has a nobody
I
has
think
an
that's a good thing about that is you can be playing so much different at the end of the year than at the beginning of the year, and that can manifest itself into what we're talking about.
The one thing I'll say about that, and it sucks for fan bases and universities that You feel like if you lose a game, even early in college football, it almost takes you out of the playoff system. It takes you out of having an opportunity to win the championship. It's so good and so exciting because you feel like every game is important. You really do. You feel like you have to win every game in college. But I'll add to the Wisconsin thought that Wisconsin and Auburn, I feel like, are two teams with 2 losses that if they win out and win their conference championships should get opportunities to be in the BCS playoff.
Now that's fair. But I would suggest this, that if your team loses a game early, now your fan base is desperately watching teams in other regions of the country that ordinarily they wouldn't care much about.
Yeah.
Texas A&M, the first ranking, they were ahead of one-loss Louisville. Well, Louisville fans were desperately watching that Mississippi State-Texas A&M game when Mississippi State knocked them out because Louisville hopes to take over that spot. So that's one thing that does open up, even though other doors are closed.
Mike and Mike, Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage in America's largest and most dependable networks. Ryan Clark is here. Trevor Matich is here. We're talking college football with you. Lamar Jackson had 7 touchdowns in Louisville's win over Boston College this past weekend. 2 stories that came out of that game, Trevor, I want to get your take on. First, Hembo sent me a note yesterday that said right now Lamar Jackson is 1-30.
Oh, yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
1-30. You have to bet $30 to win $1. In your view, is that race already over?
It's not over, but, boy, it's looking fairly over. The thing is, 7 touchdowns last week. I don't care who you play. That's insane.
Ridiculous.
And keep this in mind, too, that Louisville coach Bobby Petrino wants that Heisman for his quarterback and for his program. And he will give Lamar Jackson as many opportunities close to the goal line to be the guy that punches it in to make sure that touchdown total keeps rising. And as long as that happens, it's his to lose.
That's the exact line I was going to use, his to lose. They would have to lose, and he would have to play poorly for him to be knocked down a little bit because Harbaugh, I think, is doing a smart thing and trying to get Jabril Peppers as much there. I think that can only obviously help what already is a great program, but it's only a second year there, and to maybe we will have a finalist. It depends on, where Jabril Peppers, and then you have a Deshaun Watson. I think Browning in Washington is all of a sudden, the more they win, the more he rises up. But there's no doubt it's Lamar Jackson's to lose.
The numbers say Lamar Jackson. My fear is he doesn't have the opportunities in the games against teams that give him that quote-unquote Heisman moment as we go further. If you're Jabril Peppers and Harbaugh's doing everything he can to give you an opportunity to contribute, you win the Big Ten, you beat Ohio State, you make a play there. I believe those type of situations will give you opportunities. Also, as you mentioned, Browning in Washington, he'll have games and plays that give him a chance to have that moment.
You won't want to miss Danny Cannell, who will troll this conversation coming up in hour number 4 today. A reminder, you can listen to any and all 4 hours of Mike and Mike on demand in the ESPN app. You can also subscribe to the Best of Mike and Mike podcast, all available on the Listen tab of the ESPN app. And the winning word of the morning is just 2 minutes away. I wanted to ask you also about Bobby Petrino's comments about the committee, because they scored a whole bunch of points and people were asking questions about running up the score against a bad team. And Petrino said about blowouts needing to impress the committee, quote, "I guess we do. It's sad because there's something called sportsmanship, but maybe I made a mistake. Maybe looking back on it, at Florida State, we should have kept all the starters in and scored 80 points and did that. I don't understand why it's like that. I really don't." Now, obviously, what he's referring to is the fact that his team came out a little lower than most people expected in the first rankings. So he's basically saying the committee is telling me I need to go out there and beat people by 100 points. Do you think that's true?
I think he's got a great point. It sounds unseemly, but there's a rich history of coaches politicking for rankings and polls. I understand that part. What's holding him down, though, is not that they didn't score 80 against Florida State. I think it's even better that they pulled their starters so that they wouldn't score 80. They had mercy on Florida State. What's holding them back is their schedule, which is not their fault. Yes. Florida State is the only team, not only who's ranked that they beat, that's the only team that has a winning record in the Power 5 that they've beat. That's not their fault. And here's the thing. If the committee worships at the altar of the almighty spreadsheet, they'll look at those things and keep Louisville back. But if you took, say, Alabama, the best team in the country, if you took them out of the SEC and dropped them, say, in the MAC, no disrespect to the MAC, but their schedule would not be good enough for the committee to respect their wins, but they still would be the best team in the country. They wouldn't change how good they are, and that's the place that Louisville's in right now. They can't prove it according to the spreadsheets, but on the field, man, they're good.
So in your opinion, Louisville is good enough to be one of the 4 final teams standing. They're
Absolutely.
as good as any team
So
in the country.
If they are absolutely as good as any team in the country right now.
If you put them in
with the
that
exception
4,
of Alabama.
if you put them in the 4, then who's out?
If they're put in the 4, they'd be in the 4th spot. And
So you'd have Washington out.
You'd have Washington or Ohio State out. Now, you can make just as good a case for Ohio State, and I
Sure
think
you
Ohio
can.
State probably will be the 4th team,
Right.
because their body of work right now, and the committee is valuing quality wins more than they are penalizing for losses right now. And Ohio State has the most quality wins between the 3 teams that are really competing for that spot, which is Ohio State, Louisville, and
Washington.
Yeah.
That's great insight. Trevor, thanks as always. A pleasure to have you here. You can hear right now, by the way, everyone has a chance to win a trip to the College Football National Championship game. Now, you'll obviously be there, but everybody can come with us just for knowing this morning's winning word. And thanks to our friends at AutoZone, we're giving away 1 trip every single day, you and a guest coming with us. And I'd like to reward Brooksy. Brooksy, our producer, whose his most important job is to come up with the word.
Yes,
every
it
day.
is. And he can screw it up with the best of them.
And he repeatedly has. But in this particular case, he's come up with an easy word.
Yes, he has.
It fits the day, and it's
Yep.
easy to spell. Today's word is vote.
Very simple.
VOTE. Today's word is vote, and here are the 2 ways to enter.
Only these 2 ways, gang. I really don't want somebody doing it in another way. Think you're in and you're not and have no chance to win. So take the word vote and text it to 777-000 or enter online at Mike's Road to the CFP.com. Again, take the word, text it to 777-000 or enter online Mike's Road to the CFP.com. Good luck.
We want you on your way with us to the national championship game. Danny Cannell will join us a little bit later. Ryan Clark is here. We're busy after this word from Dave & Buster's. Listen, make the best of football season by getting to Dave & Buster's. And here's why. They have the best offer going on right now, and it's almost over. Play 3 sports games free every day till November 13th. If you think you're fast enough, show off your skills while playing the ultimate football game. It's called Gridiron Blitz.
Then get into My World. $5 apps every Sunday, Monday, and Thursday, like Huddle-O Nachos, mozzarella sticks, spinach dip, and then stay in My World and wash it down with your favorite beer. They've got over 20 to choose from. And I forgot to mention the many massive HD TVs. You're going to feel like you're at the game no matter where you sit. Come on in, get the best of their offer. Play 3 sports games free, $5 apps, and beer specials. Dave & Buster's, the only place to watch the games and play the games, and the best sports bar ever. Back after this, Mike and Mike.
Coach Ice in the backfield. Here comes a 4-man rush, and Wilson's going to throw for the end zone. He's got a man, Jimmy Graham. Does he hang on to it? He does! Touchdown! Seahawks! Jimmy Graham jumps up and spikes the ball. Another spectacular sliding, diving, one-armed, it looked like from here. Reception by number 88. This guy is unbelievable.
710 ESPN in Seattle, the play-by-play. Jimmy Graham was unbelievable. And
Yes, he was.
With no shortage of controversy and other issues. It was Jimmy Graham who really stole the show with a couple of great touchdown catches. Seahawks beat the Bills 31-25. Elsewhere, Steph Curry had the performance of the night, the performance of all time in the NBA on one level. He made 13 threes. That's the all-time record. He scored 46. Golden State beat the Pelicans by 10. And then finally, the new college football playoff rankings will be revealed tonight exclusively at 7 Eastern on ESPN. Let's see who winds up in that 4 slot this time. SportsCenter is brought to you by Tommy John.
Tommy John's best pair you'll ever wear, or its free guarantee, may sound like a bold statement, but once you experience their incredible underwear for yourself, you'll understand why they say it. Use the code Mike for 20% off your first order at TommyJohn.com. That's TommyJohn.com.
All right, so buckle your seatbelts for Danny Cannell, who'll be in here in a half hour. There's never a conversation that he's not having his own discussion about.
Cannell just tweeted me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand, and maybe I'm not popular enough to get it. I mean, I say something about Booger. He calls the show.
Yeah.
I say something about Cannell and his statements. I just bring, and then he tweets me. like, what did I do? I felt like we were all family here at ESPN. Clearly, I'm doing something wrong.
Well, when we're family, remember, like brothers, you fight. Brothers can fight. It's like, I can fight you, but nobody else can fight. That's kind of how it is.
I get it, for sure. I think it's funny, though. You know what I mean? Like this stuff is real. You know, like, guys are really into it. We believe what we say. And, Kanell tweeted me right now. Hopefully you guys will get me out of here.
You can
before
stay
he comes.
if you want when Danny's here.
Well, listen, I'm kind of nervous about Kanell. I know he usually wears suits. He'll probably have a sweatshirt on today, and I could be in trouble. And I don't want those things to happen. Greeny's already. Once Greeny tries you at ESPN,
good point.
Everybody feels like they can.
Everybody feels like, oh my God, Greeny tried him. I certainly can.
I know he's soft. Yeah, without a doubt.
The level of overstatement involved in that is so is difficult for even I to take with a straight face. Danny Kanell tweeted at Ryan Clark, I'm glad you brought FSU into the discussion. Since you asked how would the Noles do against the SEC, they're 8-1 under Jimbo. So he's throwing stats.
Well, here's the thing, though. I didn't ask how they would do against the SEC. I asked how they would do against an Alabama team that was only able to generate 10 points against LSU.
Yeah, that was the conversation. Danny's trying to broaden it to make his point, which he does very well.
As I said, Danny to me is like, and I love him. If you're going to do this, you can't do it any better than he does it. Again, I don't fish, but I understand that when you fish, you like put something in the water that'll pop up when you have a bite.
Called a bobber.
A bobber, and the rest of the time you just sit back
and that guy tried me.
And drink a beer or whatever it is. And so that's how I picture Danny. He'll tweet something, and then he'll just sort of sit back and he'll wait, and then you fell into the trap this weekend. You responded, and I picture Danny like, oh, I got one. I got one. It's
the big one.
He's a fighter.
You can't do it any better than he does it. Anyway, he'll be here. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance, our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. A little more fun with presidents, if we can, on this Election Day. Again, we are soliciting your thoughts on your favorite presidential sports names. It really has come down to 3. I like Lincoln Kennedy. Golic, I think you like Quincy Carter.
No, I like Lincoln Kennedy as well.
Quincy Carter is also a very good one because of the unique nature of Quincy, and then Carter is also a presidential name. Lincoln is 2 presidential last names, Lincoln and Kennedy. And Ryan Clark likes Clinton Dix.
So you don't like it?
I'm not saying I don't like it.
But why you just put me out? Hey, Ryan's the only person here that likes it.
No,
you like the
one you like. I disagree. I like Clinton Dix.
Thank you, Golic.
I like it too. But when I asked you to pick the one you like the best, you said Lincoln Kennedy. And Ryan said Clinton Dix.
But I can like them both. Right? I mean, it's because I like the one doesn't mean I hate the other.
I'm not saying no. I didn't mean for this to turn into a controversy.
I knew what Danny started.
I have a couple of others.
Everybody's super sensitive now.
Yeah. So I'll just throw a little presidential trivia out there for you. What would be a fun one? Golic, I suppose maybe this would be a good one in your honor. Who was the heaviest president of the United States?
Wow.
Which president was the heaviest? See how I just reworded the question?
Yeah.
I didn't change anything.
Taft.
That's correct. No! You looked that up.
Golic.
Question someone gave you that.
You are on fire, bro. I got you this time. You're on fire.
It was William Taft.
Way to go, Romano. Way to go.
Like I know he had a beer belly on him.
He weighed 300. He weighed 332 pounds.
I am the man, is what I am.
He once got stuck in his bathtub.
They should have built a bigger bathtub. I mean, he was the president.
He was, however, never tackled by a quarterback after making an interception.
There you go.
Okay, Mike and Mike, let's get back to business here. I want to play you what Randy Moss said last night about the officiating. So we spent a lot of this morning talking about the Richard Sherman play with the kicker. Was it a dirty play? Neither Ryan nor Golic believe it was a dirty play. The NFL has said it was an illegal play and should have been called. I think all 3 of us actually disagree even with that.
Yep.
One way or another, Randy Moss last night was talking about the officiating and making a bigger picture point. I'd like you guys to hear this.
Richard Sherman told Lisa Salter post-game that he's just doing his job, playing all the way to the whistle. I agree with him because that's what type of player he is. But him taking a cheap shot, I don't think it was him taking a cheap shot. I think it was a misblown call by the officials to not tackle on the 15 extra yards to give him a better kick. Yep. Then they did not move out of the way when the time was winding down to give them the clock running out to move them back a little further. So I think it was, like you said, it was bad officiating. I think it will be talked about. But where do we go from here? Do we keep on talking week in and week out about blown calls from officials? Because one thing that I can tell you that I'm seeing, man, teams are losing games by these bad calls blown by officials.
I mean, listen, you're going to get bad calls every week because they're human, and for the most part, you still have the human element, even though we do have some replay, but we're not replaying everything, so you're going to get some bad calls. I think it's like anything else. It's a combination of bad calls. It's a combination of why is this being flagged, even down to the celebration penalties, you're getting flags on them. I think it's all kind of encompassing of bad calls. Why are you calling this? Why aren't you calling that? To the point where I do think it is an issue right now. And I don't know if making referees full-time is going to make all the difference in the world. There's a lot of little changes we all think the NFL could maybe do to make it a little – fun is the word we keep you. Entertaining, may be the word as well. But as far as missed calls, those are always going to happen because of the nature of the game and the amount going on with 22 players on the field, that you're going to get some missed calls out there. But when it starts to be, you start ticking them off on your hand of this one, you start to say, well, wait a minute, what are we doing here?
Well, I think also it's the attention that these calls garner, right? When you look at this was a huge play in the game, a huge time in the game. And like Randy said, it's costing people games. And you only get 16 of them. And you have to win as many as you possibly can. And so when the attention is drawn constantly to the officials, whether it's players talking about it after the games or it's these big situations in games that are so glaringly evident to the viewers, I also agree with you, Golic. Having full-time officials won't change this because the human element is part of it. It's part of what we understand in the game, and that's why players have to play to the whistle.
I think what else hurts Greeny is you remember the play on Julio Jones where his arm was kind of held down, and you see an official one behind and one on the side.
That was, by the way, also against Seattle.
Yeah, and quite possibly in real time, that's tough to see.
Yes.
Right? But what we all get is the benefit of replay, and it's stopped and frozen. We're like, look at that. How do you miss that? When I think Herm was in here and then said, ref behind, ref on the sideline, they may in real time miss that. So I'm willing at times to look at that. But it's plays like last night where it is so obvious and evident that Richard Sherman is offside and that they should be blowing the whistle and stopping the play to make it apparent this play is dead, that if he continued to go through and hit that, it'd be an obvious penalty and 15 yards against him. But they didn't. Those are the ones that I think you really got to, you talk to the officials and say, what are you seeing here? What are you seeing here that you're not blowing a whistle when one guy is so far ahead of everybody else coming right at the ball and the kicker and the holder? You got to stop that play.
Our football business insider Andrew Brandt tweeted within the hour, NFL referees have long resisted full-time status and giving up their second or in some case first incomes.
Well, yeah, some of these guys are lawyers. I mean, they're making some good coin. You make good coin officiating, but man, you have good other job making some good coin as well.
Nothing's wrong with more money.
Amen.
Again, for those who would say, well, why do the other sports have full-time officials? Well, there are 82 NBA games, and there are 162 baseball games. You basically
16.
You're talking about what really would be a part-time job. Average salaries right now, according to Andrew Brandt, are in the $175,000 a year range for these refs, for the comparatively limited number of days that they work. They'll be over 200,000 by the year 2019.
Greeny, I don't, and this is way off the subject. So my wife had just texted me, and she was talking about making the game more entertaining and the penalties and different things that people are saying. She says, I know how to make it more entertaining. When a team gets a celebration penalty, there should be a dance battle.
Well, dance off. Let's break briefly on that thought and come back, because that is one of the things that's going on that a lot of people, including LeBron James yesterday, are talking about. Mike and Mike is presented by Progressive Insurance. In November, Progressive is giving thanks for our military service men and women by donating over 100 vehicles to veterans in need through the Keys to Progress program. You can learn more by going to progressive.com/Keys to Progress. We'll come back and talk about the No Fun League, which everyone seems to be talking about lately, and more. And then Danny Cannell will be on his way in here, and that'll be no fun. That's after this word from Casper. Golic, I cannot believe it is fall. It's only going to get crazier and colder the next few weeks. You should consider curling up on your Casper mattress and hibernating until spring.
It's one perfect mattress with two high-tech foams that provide all the comfort and support you need. and you could try it for 100 nights risk-free. That's the beauty, gang. Try it in your home for 100 nights with free shipping and returns. Go to Casper.com, use the code Mike for $50 towards the purchase of your mattress. That's Casper.com. The code is Mike. Terms and conditions apply. We're back after this on Mike and Mike.
Cintas, getting you ready for the
Mike and Mike and all of your Twitter through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, trying to make up for another weekend spent in your football lair. Remind your loved one you still exist with a 1-800-Flowers bouquet of 36 autumn roses for only $36. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. Hurry. The offer ends Friday. Here are some tweets on one of the topics of the morning, and that is Richard Sherman. Now, I have a defensive back in the room here in the form of Ryan Clark. So, Ryan, you tell me if you agree or disagree with this. Kelly tweets, Richard Sherman gets away with more penalties than any other defensive back.
That's probably wrong. I mean, they all get away with it. We just care more about his penalties. He's a more high-profile player.
Break down that. A lot of people talking again about the last play of the game. When it was 4th down for the Bills, when they were throwing it in, Tyrod Taylor threw it in the end zone, and they were on the left hash, and Tyrod rolled a little bit left, and way over on the other side of the field, the receiver ran into the end zone well past 5 yards, and Sherman just jacked him. And explain why that is illegal.
Well, so once the quarterback gets out of the pocket, whether it's a boot or whether he's scrambling to make a throw, you can contact the wide receiver. We used to be told, especially in the red zone, push them out of bounds. Because once they go out of bounds, they can't come back in and be the first to touch it. So once he leaves that pocket area, tackle to tackle, you can contact the guy. There still is pass interference if the ball's in the air. Right. But at that point, you can't contact him. And so that's actually a smart play by Richard Sherman.
Pete tweets, a common theme in all of this is Seattle gets crucial calls. There is no question that they have now in 3 times in the last 4 seasons on Monday Night Football, so it's a standout game for everyone to see, been on the right side of some big calls, the fail Mary, and then last year the ball that was batted out of the back of the end zone. This one didn't compare. None of the things that happened last night compared to those, because those were right at the ends of games. This was plays at the end of the first half.
Well, just a couple of weeks ago, right, we're talking about Earl Thomas, or last week, we were talking about Earl Thomas saying some calls, you don't necessarily get some calls on the road. So they felt like they were jobbed a little bit by the referees in that game. And so it goes both ways. They're going to miss some calls. Right. It just so happens that the Seattle Seahawks are a team we care about because they're usually very good recently, and they play in primetime games where we all get to see it and talk about it. But this is football.
You know what else I saw this past weekend that was unbelievably smart? How about what Chip Kelly did? Chip Kelly, when they were playing the Saints, the Saints right before half, there were 8 seconds to go in half, and the Saints, I believe, were inside the 10, and they had 4 receivers out. And as soon as the ball was snapped, Chip Kelly had 3 of his DBs basically tackled and held the wide receivers and got the penalty. All it did was going to be a 5-yard penalty. It was just going to be half the distance, and they burned 4 more seconds off the clock. So the Saints
make a decision.
Didn't have time to really run one more play, and if they didn't get a kick a field goal, so they had to kick a field goal. It's a great play.
Yeah, they had to make a decision.
You want to talk about working on situations. That was a very, very smart play.
Which is a situation I've never worked on.
Either.
I've never been told, hey, RC, listen, if it's under 10 seconds, just go grab it.
Go grab them.
I thought that was awesome as well.
Yeah, I agree.
I totally agree with you. And you know that I'm not the biggest Chip Kelly fan because of his system and what he's doing in the NFL, but that is the stuff that I love. When we were talking about the chess match that is baseball last week, and we were sort of debating whether that's appealing to fans or not, I loved that. Okay, very quickly, LeBron James has now become another in the chorus of voices saying the NFL is no fun. Here is LeBron yesterday.
I've heard some of the comments from some of the players as far as the game is the fun part of it is kind of being taken away. And I know when I play football, I played it for that reason, for the competition one and for the fun of it. And if those main guys are saying, I've seen a couple of the main guys talk about it, the game is not as fun. It's all political and things of that nature at this point. You definitely don't want to take the fun away from the game. That's why we all fell in love with sports in general, because you have fun with it in the beginning. But I'm not the commission. I'm not on the board. I don't know, but football is such a great sport. but I don't have the answer for why, fewer people are watching.
So, look, we had a long conversation, the three of us, last week about the NFL and ratings and what's going wrong and all of that. And we don't need to rehash all of that. But there is one question just based on this, and Richard Sherman said it's no fun and everything else. The one thing I would ask is when we see some of the things they're calling penalties, the taunting, the celebration, taunting does not I'm not in favor of you knock a guy down and you stand over him and flex and all that kind of stuff. But they are calling things that make me as a viewer and as a fan of the sport saying, who is it they think doesn't like this? I mean, who is it that is saying, oh, my goodness, this guy just got up and he danced and he brushed his chest, which seems to be the new big move. That's a 15-yard penalty. Why are they calling that? Who's thinking, you know what, we got to get that out of football?
I wonder if a lot of it, Ryan, is the league is saying we don't want to project this image down to the little leagues and have all of a sudden a little league kid doing something like this as well. I don't know because I don't understand it. I'm somewhat stunned at how rigid they are on doing some celebrating, though they do let punters celebrate. We saw Marquette King from the Raiders.
He rides the Broncos.
Yeah, he certainly does, doing the bull dance. I mean, but I'm not sure why they're doing what they're doing, and just it seems like there's so much focus after a touchdown of making sure, just like in college, I can't stand it how they stare at the guy the ref does after a kid scores a touchdown in college. I don't understand that part of it.
You know what was crazy? What's crazy to me is I remember being younger and, I never thought I'd get to the NFL, but thinking to myself, when you get to that level, when you earn that, you can celebrate however you want to. Remember, it was that way. Like, in high school, you couldn't do it. College, you couldn't do it. But if you made it to the league, if you made a big play, because now you're in the 1% of the best football players in the world, you can behave however you want to after because you've earned it. And so I don't think it's necessarily that you can't celebrate. I think it's the fact that they call penalties, the way that they watch it, it turns people off to the league trying to control the individuality of its players.
Yeah. Mike and Mike in our Sports Center, brought to you by Sport Clips Haircuts Help a Hero program, which funds scholarships for U.S. veterans who are pursuing a college degree or vocational certification. Visit your nearest Sport Clips to learn more and donate now through November 11th. These Tuesdays go so quickly. Yeah, thank you, Ryan. Thank you very much, as always.
Yeah, get me out here before Cannell gets here, man.
I do think your wife was right. A dance-off, I think, is
It'd be so sweet, man.
That'd be really
cool. It'd be a good time.
Yeah, people would get ejected. We'll be right back.
Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans proudly supports Mike and Mike. Rocket Mortgage brings the mortgage process into the 21st century. Forget about digging through stacks of paperwork. This completely online process lets you safely share your bank statements and pay stubs with a touch of a button. Using your phone or tablet, you can get approved for purchase or refinance in just a few minutes. Get a custom mortgage solution at your own pace, whenever and wherever you want. So if you're looking to refinance or buy a home, check out Rocket Mortgage today at quickenloans.com/Mikes.
Equal housing lender licensed in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
I'm Andy Katz from ESPN along with my co-host Seth Greenberg. On Courtside with Katz and Coach G, we'll be joined by Arizona head coach Sean Miller and Indiana head coach Tom Crean in advance of the Armed Forces Classic in Honolulu.
Red Hot USC heads to Seattle to face 5th-ranked Washington.
72 yards, the big play strike.
Coverage begins Saturday at 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.